Okay, today I want to look at exponents, and these are some of the exam style questions that come up on the DP papers. So I'm just going to go through these questions. If you haven't had a look at them yet, then just pause the video, attempt them, and then come back and I'll go through the answers for them. Okay, so hopefully now you've had a chance to go through these. Please feel free to fast forward the video if you just want to check the answers, or if you want to follow through with me going through the questions. So, information we have at the top: find the following values in the form of an integer or a fraction where they are integers. Okay, so A and B. So we can have a fraction or we can have an integer answer. Okay, so if we go through the first ones, we know that 3 times 3 times 3 is going to give us 27. I'm going to work across. Now, negative becomes a power. Negative becomes a fraction. So 3 squared, so 1 over 9. So the negative brings it down to the denominator. And 1 over 3 cubed is 1 over 27. Okay, next one, when we're squaring a fraction, the brackets on the outside, it's around everything. So we square both parts. So 1 squared is just 1, 3 squared is 9. The next one, we're going to square the top, 4 over 9. And we're going to cube, so we get 8 over 27. Now for the next one, with the negative, we need to flip the fraction. So use the reciprocal first. So it becomes 3 over 1 squared with a positive power. That's just 3 squared, which is 9, because the 1 squared is still 1, and we don't need it as a denominator. This one becomes 3 over 2 squared, which becomes 9 over 4. Next one becomes 3 over 2 cubed, which is 27 over 8. Okay, next one we've got to the power of a half, which is the same as the square root of 4, which is just 2. Next one here, let's make it 4 to the half, and then we're going to take the 3 out. So it becomes 2 cubed, which is 8. So take the numerator out of the bracket. And this one here, we have a negative, so it becomes 1 over root 4, which is 1 over 2. Because of the negative, it becomes a fraction. Okay, next one here, we've got root 25, which is just 5. 1 over root 25, which is 1 over 5. And then here, we're going to square root both of them. So it's root 25 over root 4, which is 5 over 2. And it says leave as a fraction. So don't make that a decimal, because up here, leave as a fraction or an integer. Okay, great. We're going to move on to the next ones. So some questions on the screen here. If you haven't had a chance to look at them yet, then just pause the video and then come back and I'll go through them. Okay, I'm going to work through these now. So when we are multiplying indices, we are going to add the powers. So we get a to the 8. There's a little 1 here, so we get a to the 7. And then here we get a to the 3, because we're doing a half times 6. Next one down here is a to the 12, because when it's in brackets, we can multiply the powers. Or we can assume, this is the same as a to the 6 times a to the 6. So adding them still gives us 12. But we might have a larger power, so it's much easier to use the brackets and just multiply them together. This one is also a to the 12. If we're dividing, we subtract a to the 4. Down here, I'm going to add a 1, so I don't forget about it. I'm going to add the powers, a to the 6. Here, I'm going to add the powers to get a to the 8 divided by a to the 5. Then I subtract the powers, gives me a to the 3. On the top here, I'm going to use my a's first. I'm going to subtract them. So I actually get 2 minus negative 3, which becomes an addition. So we actually have a to the 5. And then for the b's, we have b to the 6 divided by b to the 6. I have 6 here, I have 4 here, I have 2 here, so they actually cancel. That is my final answer. Okay, next one here, we're going to multiply these together. Now, if you think about that logically, 1/5 times 5 actually gives me a whole. So if I have 3/5, but if you want to bring this out, I'm going to multiply them. So 3 over 5 times 5 over 1. That still becomes 15 over 5. That just becomes 3. If you want to check and you're not quite confident with the rules. So a to the 3 is what we have here. Next one here, you could bring it out. I'm just going to bring it down here. So we could do 3 over 5 times 10 over 1 gives me 30 over 5. Oh, I have 6. So it's a to the 6. And then here, I believe that is just 1. It's not the most clear. I'm not sure why that's showing that. Maybe it's a -1. I'm not sure how you've read it. It's probably a -1 actually. Just looks like an equals. Apologies, it's blurry. So we're going to get A, and we have -1 times -2 is going to give us a +2. Don't worry too much about that one if you misread it, because I apologize, it's not quite clear. Okay, looking at the bottom, we have a little bit of algebra here. So let's think about logically what we are doing with these powers. Just make this a bit smaller. So we've got x plus 3, x minus 1, 1 minus x. So we're going to add these together. X plus 3, add 1, add -x. So it's still -x. So the x's are going to cancel. 3 plus 1 is 4. So a to the 4 is the final answer. Here we are going to subtract them. Be very careful when we're subtracting. Adding, it doesn't matter the same, because when we add negatives, nothing really changes. It goes down. When we're here, when we're doing n plus 5 minus n plus 3, remember you are subtracting both of these elements. So n plus 5 minus n minus 3. The n's are going to cancel, and we get a squared, because 5 take away 3 is 2. And then over here, we're going to do -8 minus -10. That becomes a plus. -8 plus 10 gives us 2, so a squared also. Okie dokie, moving on to some here. So we've got some questions here about E, okay, and we actually have some answers at the top. We have to choose the letters for them. So I just want you to pause for a moment here, and then come back and go through the questions. Okay, so we have to think about what we know, and you can choose them in any order here. Like I look at this question and I might go, oh, I know the square root of E. I know that's E to the half. So I know that actually is going to be B. Okay, now this one is going to be a negative. So this one's going to be turned into E to the -x because it's a fraction. So I know that is going to be D. Here we are subtracting them. So we get 2x minus x, because that's the power, because there's a division, just like we did in the last question. We get x, so e to the x, and that is just going to be c. Here we get e to the -2, so that is going to be a. And then over here, think about what we're doing. We're doing x, take away -2. That's what we do because we're dividing. So it actually becomes e to the x plus 2, and you have g for that. It's actually quite nice. There wasn't another option for that, so even if you weren't quite sure. And then here we've got e to the x, but then square rooted. Now I would pause here and I go, okay, this is e to the x to the half. That's what that means, square root. So that's the same as e to the x over 2, because I can multiply my powers. That gives me e as the answer up there for this one. Hope that helps. Okay, I've just got one more question here we're going to have a little look at. And I want to just talk about logic with this. So have a go at this question. We're going to look at matching up the 6 equations at the bottom with the graphs from A, B, C, D, E, and F for this one. Okay, I'm going to go through them now. And what I like to do, just for think about my common sense, is I will just substitute numbers in. Okay, so I'll be like, okay, if, say I'm doing y equals 2 to the x. Okay, if x is 0, y is just going to be 1. Sorry, getting ahead of myself. It's just going to be 1. Okay, if x was 1, y would be 2. If x was 2, y would be 4. Okay, because they would replace my power. Now, if we just look at a different one and we look at y equals 5 to the x, if x is 0, it's still going to be 1. Okay, that makes sense. They're both at 1. If x is 1, y is going to be 5. If x is 2, y is going to be 25. Okay, interesting. This is telling me now that my value at the bottom, the 5 to the x, is increasing more rapidly here. So that means it's steeper. So this one is steeper. Also, notice the values. They're all positive. So it has to be on this side of the graph. Okay, and then I can see that my A, well, let's double check. E, the value of E is 2 point something. Okay, so it's 2 point something. That tells me, okay, that the steepest graph has to be this one, and the not so steep is going to be this one, because it's got the smaller base number. So I can easily say here now A, B, C, based on the logic I've used. Now you might know other information about exponential graphs. If you're not sure, just work out some of the points and it will help you with this. Okay, now same thing over here. We're having a little look at these values. So if we have y equals 2 to the minus x, okay, if x is 0, y is still 2, yeah? And I feel like this is a trick question. X is 1, y is going to be, okay, so it's going to be 1 over 2, because it's negative here, notice. If x equals 2, it's going to be y equals 1 over 4. Now, interestingly, these don't plot on the other side of the graph, okay? So what's going to happen now is I would look at here and I go, okay, well, there's still positive. So match the graphs that we have to do here. So if there's 2, quarter. Okay, so what's going to happen now